I think using the term pizza, it's not all in bad, but using the term pizza is a misnomer. If they said savory cheese tart, you go, okay, this is quite a nice savory cheese tart.
It needs all the things. Give it all the things.
Oh, perfect. You nailed it.
You can't bend physics. What you can do is write better software.
And you're doing MPLS changes or BUP changes. May God be with you, right?
I always feel like I'm just a little fish in a sea of big fish.
I've got a nested 6-node vSAN.
Oh, guys. People, quite often think that they don't have anything to bring to the table when they absolutely do.
Everybody should. Anybody in IT that skips the phone stuff, it just hasn't earned it.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question.
On demand.
Correct.
Welcome to Gigacast episode 22 for October 14th, 2018. Man, it feels like it's been forever.
It has. How you doing, buddy?
I am tired. It's been like, I feel like it's been like 10 days in my house because of sick people in my house. And it's just been one thing after another and frustrating and tiring, and I'm not getting work done, and it's just life, it's what you have to look forward to when you have a second kid, Tony.
Yeah, literally could come anytime now.
Yeah. So because of Mr. Tony, you know what? I realized I just didn't even do my scripted intro. Wow.
Yeah, you completely fubbed that up.
I totally did, but that's okay. I don't care at this point. So, Tony, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Tony Reeves, broadcasting live from my home lab.
Okay. And we have a special guest co-host, the emergency pinch hitter, just in case all of a sudden Tony gets an emergency phone call.
Yeah.
Tim, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. You've been promoted.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So you've gone from listener to guest to special guest co-host.
Yes.
Man,
soon I will be the host. Wow.
We're being replaced.
We're being assimilated.
The Borg resistance is futile.
So a couple of updates. It's Blogtober. And that means a lot of people are writing stuff. So I didn't want to do Blogtober because I just don't have any time to do this well. And
no time. You're kicking my butt. You're on post 3 and I've got 1.
But I'm cheating because I'm not doing technical content.
It's true. That does make it a little easier.
So yeah, I have 3 posts out on my blog, gigbrit.com/blog. And then, Tony, you've got 1 out?
Yeah, I've got basically my cheater welcome to Blogtober post out there, and that's all I've come up with so far. That's at www.digitalvspace.com.
And then, Tim, do you have a blog, or do you not do that Blogtober thing?
So I actually am having to start blogging again for the new gig, and I realized that my last post was in October, but I did not mark it Blogtober, so I'm actually going to go repost that right now.
Awesome.
Nice. Get your credit, man.
Yeah.
Sign up with Matt.
Our other piece of news is Tony got a promotion at VMUG. What happened, Tony?
I got promoted.
Should I not say anything?
No, it's official. I advertised it on Twitter. I got the permission and everything early last week. So I am now a Wisconsin VMUG leader instead of a steering committee member. So
congratulations. If I had an applause sound effect, I would play one.
Thank you.
But I am not that technically savvy of a podcast host yet.
Oh, you don't have your clips ready to go?
No, it's yeah. Well, someday we will get there, and I will be just like Pedro Arrow. But
so it's funny. I actually just did virtually speaking.
I heard that. It was
this past couple weeks. Man, he has that down to a science.
Yeah, he's good. He's on the ball.
Well, he does a lot of them. So.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so that is our news. Tim, do you have any updates and news that you'd like to share with the crowd?
I don't. Everything's been real good. Been doing the VMUG circuit, so I've got to see lots of great people here recently, do a lot of good sessions talking about VMware Cloud Services.
Cool. So we have a special guest today now you are officially a Microsoft employee, if I'm not mistaken, right, Ben?
That is correct. At least I wasn't Friday. I can't say after the podcast.
Well, you never know. As long as you don't share anything that's NDA, I think you'll be all right.
I think we're pretty good.
So Ben, just so I don't screw it up, how do I say your last name?
DeQual. Ben DeQual.
Ben DeQual. All right, thank you very much. So, Ben, as I was saying before this started recording, I found you because of your V Brown Bag with Chris Williams, where you talked about a whole bunch of Azure stuff. And the more I listened, the more confused I got. And I just reached out to you directly and said, I need to talk to this guy. And you're gracious and willing to come on the show, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Anytime, man. Anytime. It's good to help out anywhere we can in the community at large. I mean, we really, no matter what sort of technology space we work for, work in, whatever, we all sort of really work towards the same goal to sort of advance things through tech. So always happy to help.
Cool. So can you give me and everybody else like a quick 60-second intro to you and who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. So I work for Microsoft in our Intune Cloud CTO team. I cover off our apps and infra side of things over there. And that really, what does it actually mean? We've actually got multiple different CTO teams at Microsoft. We have one actual Microsoft CTO and then different groups with CTOs in them. What happens there is I work in the field organization. We have a lot of we call it Microsoft either cloud solution architects or technical solution professionals, basically solution architect type people focusing on Azure out in the field. We have thousands of these now, which is kind of amazing. It's grown about 10x in the last 4 years. So I work on the leadership for those guys, trying to make sure guys and girls, and try and make sure we get them what they need. We listen to what they're doing with customers, because particularly when you're talking about cloud, it's so important to understand what customers need, because we can make iterations or net new products really quickly and want to hear that feedback. And then also I interact and work with our engineering groups inside of Azure engineering to get that feedback, to go and say, how do we build it out, and sit in a lot of their different offsites and sort of do a lot of that interfacing work. So it's kind of interesting, and you get to see a lot of things and be confused all at the same time.
Well, and I feel like from a traditional IT standpoint, because I'm your typical, do everything IT person. At least that's where I've come from. Coming into this new cloud stuff, it's a fire hose of information constantly, and half the time I feel like if you don't know how to code, you don't know how to do anything. And and there's that there is that bit of Azure that's there for that, but I feel like Microsoft has done a really good job about putting a usable user interface on top of all of that and making it not so code heavy.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting space. I talk about, I always look at it sometimes as sort of the evolution of what I've done myself. I've been in sort of everywhere from sort of support, IT support roles, to sort of architect roles as a customer, and then running teams, and then moved over to the partner world and then into Microsoft. And I look at the evolution, even working in there, and I went, I used to do batch files. It was cool. And then we started to write VB scripts. I had some 600, 700 line VB scripts, which were terrible. And then, we started using more around PowerShell. I was always doing a lot in Bash, particularly because I was doing a lot with different storage arrays and VMware and other things, and Linux OS as well. And then sort of now we're moving towards sort of, using, whether we use like ARM, Microsoft only centric, sort of our default template, or you can go and use Terraform, or you can go and use Chef or Puppet or YAML and build out your Helm charts, all these different things, but they're kind of, to me, just extensions. It doesn't make a developer. It's more about just understanding how the code can do the execution. And that said, and a lot of people will move to that, or move to using Bash or PowerShell as they get more advanced with the technology. It's quicker, it's easier, we know what we're doing. But the portal's great to sort of start off being able to build things, view things, and also go and set up reporting and analysis and stuff like that. You can get some nice little visuals in there. So
Yeah.
I think one of the better things. The hardest thing I'd say about the portal is there's so much in there to look at. There is so many options to go and look at. You go from, hey, particularly, and my background before joining Microsoft, just to be clear, was like, very data center. So data center networking, storage, compute, a lot of NetApp, a lot of VMware, a lot of Cisco, some Juniper, and a few other things. sort of coming and going, yeah, cloud's just that. And it kind of was maybe back then, 5.5 years ago, was something like Amazon, moving a little bit more. Microsoft didn't even have virtual machines. In fact, they went from going, hey, we use platform as a service for our own apps. You should build it that way, which is a bit of a step too fast for people. And people sort of expect that sometimes when they look at cloud. And then you jump in and you look at the fact that there is serverless, remote execution environments to go and run things based on an event, which is still, we can get that, but then start looking at the fact we have things like a genomics analysis service inside of Azure where you can go and do second-degree genomics analysis. Like, seriously.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't even know what to say.
I'm lost already.
Lost already. I mean, you've got things where you can do media, you can do rendering, you can do all these things. So even if you have a good idea about what these services are, it's so daunting just to work out which one's which. Why would I use them, and how do I use them? And that's one of the hardest things, I think, with cloud. Not just a Microsoft approach to it, but any of the other two largest players I see out there in terms of in consuming and using it. So that on hand on heart is sort of one of the things we see the most.
So let's start with kind of the beginnings of things, because our primary audience is a bunch of VMware people. They probably don't spend a lot of time in Azure and Stat and all that kind of stuff, but because of things that are coming and available and happening, we all feel like we all have to learn AWS, we all have to learn Azure, we all have to learn, you name it. So when starting with Azure, let's just start at the beginning. So what's kind of the Azure 101 best place to start for somebody who wants to get their feet wet and figure this stuff out?
Yeah, I think conceptually, if you go and look at Azure Docs, I think it was docs.microsoft.com, just search it on your favorite search engine. And I have to say that to sort of vary it out a bit, but go and look there.
Well, I'm going to tell you it's not Bing. Sorry.
Oh, come on. Bing is great.
Sorry.
Don't want to see my screen right now. But look, it's pretty much you go and use your search. I mean, go and look at the Azure Docs page if you can pull it up if anyone's looking at it now. Great place to start. We have a huge amount of documentation. You can look at creating a VM, and it's kind of even catering to the audience. You go look at creating a Windows VM. We'll talk about doing it through the portal or doing it through PowerShell. You go and look at creating a Linux VM, and we'll say, here's how you create it from Bash or maybe using Terraform. So there are a lot of people are playing already. We try and go to what they're using as their tool set. Great place to start, super easy. Also taking it a step further where you talk about how do we manage the billing and the networking and security before we even deploy our first application. Under Azure Docs, there is a virtual data center, the Azure Virtual Data Center section, which I showed to, I think, pretty much everyone, because this talks about connectivity, security, management of your subscriptions, which is really a billing construct, and how to do it. And that's a cool place to start too. The other really good thing I've now incorporated when I talk to people and say, go and look at this if you want to just start somewhere, is Microsoft Learn. We announced it for Azure at Ignite 2 weeks ago. Microsoft Learn is doing, basically, you can go and do a module which might be, and I think no more than about an hour and a half, but it's consisting of 5 to 10 minute exercises. So you can do little bits at a time. And you go and select a role that you're doing, whether it's architect, engineer, admin, and then you can go and do the training exercises. And what we've tried to do here to make it easy is we've even built in little bits of the Azure portal into the Learn, so you can go and do things, write them in Bash or PowerShell. You can actually pick PowerShell or Bash, test out the concepts you're learning about in a 5-10 minute segment, and then hit verify, and it'll verify you've deployed something correctly. And put a whole system about it so you can kind of gamify it, you can compete. And it's a real great way to start, because it is something you can go and say, hey, I've got 10 minutes free. Let's go and learn about provisioning a VM. Now let's look how we install Apache on that Linux VM.
This is really cool. I'm actually just looking at this now, the Microsoft Learn thing. I didn't know that was, around. And as within the past couple of weeks, I have become the Azure guy on my team. So this is going to be extremely helpful. And just by the look of it, I think it was built perfectly, and you explained it perfectly. That's awesome.
Yeah. This has been a concerted effort we've been putting on for over a year now. You've probably noticed on Twitter, just because they're so out there and loud, a lot of people out of the VMware community, other communities that we've brought on recently as developer or cloud advocates. People like guy I've known for many years, Jeremiah Dooley, joined recently from NetApp in the Azure Ops side of things. You may know, and these teams are really taking a lot of this content, helping build this up. By the feedback that's coming from the different customers. It's really good to see it come out and come to fruition.
So real quick, just speaking from a home lab perspective, what can you do with a free account? How far can you take it? How deep can you go in the rabbit hole as far as learning it?
It just depends. I mean, I hate the just depends answer is going to be a very engineering answer for anyone here, but it's going to depend how much you're going to try and do. $200 is what you can get for a free account without using a credit card.
That's awesome.
Is that $200 a year, or
it's just one time? It's a
$200. Sorry, $200 one-off. But
okay.
I mean, you can use potentially other email addresses. I'd never suggest that.
Brilliant.
That's a great way to start. And then also, but you can also go and do things too. The part of that Learn, what I mentioned there, everything you do as exercises within the Azure portal, in the Learn portal, is not something you're being billed for.
Okay, so and that's actually in the live portal?
Oh.
Yeah, it is. It'll actually spin up a Bash or an Azure Shell for Bash or PowerShell, for example, and you go and do things.
Oh, that's sweet.
That's brilliant.
So we don't charge for anything that's happening there. We have the whole concepts of the Microsoft Developer Network licenses, where you do get, I think it's $250 a month in consumption, and then taking it all the way back to what can we do. When I say depends, if you go and spin up a machine with 6 GPUs and InfiniBand and 200 gig of memory, you're going to be in trouble, and that will go pretty quickly in less than a few hours.
Right. I'm sure.
On the other hand, if you're going in and sort of being a little bit measured with what you do and say, hey, I'm going to set up some basic container stuff. We've got maybe a VM or two, but keep the memory CPU specs low. And be smart about it. You can do auto shutdown, all this kind of stuff. You probably get away with a month or two of playing around if you're being modest and smart. And I mean, sort of, it's come a long way for me. I mean, I still remember having to run VMware Workstation machine or then nest other machines and try and build things. I can't tell you how much I loved running Exchange with a Jet database inside of a nested VM. It was special. But it's a little bit more than what you can do there. But of course, you've got the time limit. But the other good thing too is if you get to the stage where you go, hey, I've run out of credit, and you go and set something else up, you can save a lot of your environment the way you've set it up as code. So you're networking. Go, hey, I like my networking like this. I'm now going to build some VMs up like this, and go and do another account and just probably deploy that out in a few minutes rather than figure it out over a few weeks.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's kind of cool. You can save everything like that.
Yeah, actually, that's another good thing too. When you go and create something in the Azure portal through a GUI, you're clicking, going through, it'll show you how to configure it, what the code looks like for ARM. So if you want to deploy it in an ARM template, Azure Resource Management template, it has all the information in there.
Is there possibly a Terraform output for it?
Not yet. Personally, I use Terraform far more than I use ARM. And my opinion of the world, and we have this conversation, is a lot of people, it's become the de facto standard, really, particularly for cloud. Particularly for cloud, when you look at Amazon and Azure. We don't have the outputs where it's running the output into Terraform. We do have a huge amount of integration. If you go in the Azure portal, in fact, and go into Bash, Azure Shell, we have Terraform built in there. You don't have to go and load it on your machine. You can actually have Terraform running there.
That's awesome.
As well as Ansible. And it's pretty cool little things to have.
Nice.
So I'm a Microsoft partner, so I've been playing around with my partner credits for the last couple of years. And they, as a partner, you get like 100 credits a month. So basically, it runs my 3CX Windows phone system for my company. That's cool. Essentially all I use it for is just running my phone system in the cloud. But it's cool because like, yeah, I can play around with it. The other thing I found recently is I'm starting to do some work for a nonprofit. And if you set up the arrangement with the nonprofit entity TechSoup, you can apply for a large bucket of Azure credits, and it's something like either 5,000 a year or 5,000 a month. I can't remember which way it goes.
Pretty cool, yeah. There is a lot we do. I mean, that's been one of the coolest things working. There is a lot we do for nonprofits.
Yeah, I was surprised. It's like double what AWS gives.
I'm not going to comment because I just don't know well enough, honestly. No, I kid you not. I mean, yeah. I find it hard enough to keep up with the changes we make. I can't look over the lake at AWS constantly and go, "What are you guys doing?" I think if I break it down, we're both doing cool stuff.
Well, that's just it. I mean, and it's all it's all changing. I feel like it's all changing so fast. It's just hard to keep up. But so the when I first kind of heard about in realistic terms, you know, what Azure is and what it's doing, and the other thing I've just realized is I pronounce it Azure, but I'm in meetings all the time where people pronounce it Azure or some other variant of this word. But you know,
you can pronounce it however you want. If you can't tell, I'm Australian. The odd surname. My dad was born in Italy, so Italian there. When I look at the word, it's like it should be Azure. But then
that's a new one. I haven't heard that. That
is a new one
because that's what it means. I mean, like, you know, Il Azzurri, the Italian thing, you know, the sky blues. So it is sky blue, hence cloud. But then, yeah, as I a lot of people at Microsoft out in the US when I was in Australia, and since I moved here, of course, to Redmond, I do just say Azure because it seems to just be easier for people to understand.
But where I was going with that, when I first kind of came across this whole cloud services thing, you know, I was a really small business IT guy managing, you know, a handful of VMware hosts. And I'm thinking like, man, this would be really great if we could just move all this stuff into a cloud provider. But, you know, at the time, and probably even still a little bit now, it was cost prohibitive because it would cost them 4 times as much to run this just like a domain controller and a file server, you know, in Azure versus just running it, you know, on a machine in a closet somewhere. So at some point, does it make sense for kind of small and medium businesses to do full data center replacement with a service like Azure, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear that perspective because I've only when I work as a customer, it's only with larger, at least to mid-enterprise size and larger companies. So I'm sort of curious to hear how that works.
Okay.
On a price, so there's a few different ways of looking at it. Firstly, I think let's talk about cloud in general. If you're running like for like on-premises to cloud, if you're going to pick things up and run them the exact same way you are on-premises, pick them up, lift and dump, leave it, do it. It could be marginal if it's going to be cheaper or not, because you're paying for the assets you're using continuously based on when you subscribed.
Right.
Versus here's the Dunk Apps asset. You can maybe sweat it more, whatever else. I say that honestly. I mean, we should be able to be cheaper in most cases, and we can even see prices get well below the 10 cents per core hour price, which is pretty cool, particularly when you're talking about the huge workloads. But it's also really easy in cloud where you've sunk your cost in to your capital on premises. You can't go beyond what you already have without a new PO going out or someone going in the store with a credit card for a small business.
Right.
While in the cloud, it can blow that limit. It's, you know, quite possible to blow that limit by saying, oh, I wonder what this does. Yeah, there are quotas we put on things. If people go and log, you get them extended. But yeah, I think, honestly, for a lot of businesses, the first thing I'll do from a small business is go down the path of look for the highest level of abstraction I can logically get to. I wouldn't be running anything IaaS based if I didn't have to. If I was running file-based workloads, I would look at OneDrive or Dropbox or Box. Trying to think if there's any other options really out there. If I was looking at that kind of configuration, I'd be looking for definitely something like Xero or MYOB for my accounting software. I'd be looking at Office 365 and Skype and SharePoint Online, or something like, or Salesforce and Google Docs, whatever it is. But I wouldn't want to be managing any infrastructure, period. And then the other custom point too is, you said it's in a closet. You're paying for a different level of availability than you would on premises.
Precisely. Yeah.
So that's the other big thing too. Maybe we may have huge economies of scale. We have innovations where even we design our own service to a specific spec and publish it to the Open Compute project. It's really efficient. It's great. We've even got a whole data center in the North Sea underwater right now.
Yeah, that's a cool project.
That's so cool.
Project Murik. You can go and watch the cameras on the live feed and see fish flying past, swimming past. So that's the other thing, which is sort of different there as well. I looked at some of this and thought about when I was at a financial services company. It was not what you call huge. It was about 600 people, but very, very tech centric. There was about 100 people in the dev team, and I was running a team of about 20 odd people in the infrastructure team, supporting a lot of the devs and the other workloads in production, everything else. I look at it now and go, what we had to do to get to a sort of enterprise grade situation was pretty huge and disruptive in terms of data center racks, build outs, CapEx levels people weren't familiar with previously. But now I think with the cloud, what's kind of cool is it makes available to that person, maybe a ma and pop shop with, 10 people working there, all the way up to those large companies, the same sort of level of enterprise grade stuff they can run. You can go and run a machine as a single instance and get like 3.9 SLA, and then turn on automatic backup and DR to another location. I mean, how could you do that as a small shop with 20 people in a company and servers in a closet today? It's pretty cool.
You really can't. That's the kind of
Yeah, it offers more. It can cost more. Approach with caution. Abstract as much as you can. That's what I would say.
And I feel like it comes back to this thing of like, maybe it's just because I don't know enough about how to do this stuff. Because there was a while ago, like a month or two ago, across Twitter, I came across this website that a guy was saying. The website is haveibeenpwned.com or .org or something like this. And it's basically this guy who took a bunch of like open databases of email addresses that have been lost in various hacks. So like the Yahoo hack or whatever. And he's dumped them all into an Azure database, and he runs this whole the web front end, the database, everything's run in Azure. And he calculated it out that it costs him $7 a day to run this site, so people can go to it, punch in an email address, and see if their email has been compromised in one of the hacks or not. And over like, he just breaking it down to like the $7 a day cost. I'm looking at what he's doing with his large amount of data, and I'm like, clearly, maybe I'm just missing. Like, maybe I just don't know how to build stuff in Azure well enough to make it cost effective. Because I feel like what he's got with this service he's providing, out of his own pocket, must just be built and engineered well enough that it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and that's sort of one of the things you can do with cloud, and that's why, and I mentioned serverless before, that's so interesting to people, but you can go and run a database as a service and just pay for the level of transaction, pay for the cost you want to get in terms of performance for transactions, all this kind of stuff, and put your data in. It takes away a lot of management, everything else, and it can be very low cost, particularly for something like that. It's not exactly this IO intensive database.
Right.
Versus running on a VM where you're allocating, say, 8 gig of memory and 4 CPUs constantly.
And I don't know how he's got it built to know enough to say, again, what he's got. For various services, but.
You go and look at the cost. I mean, if you get your portal, go and look, for example, even just something as simple as relational database, and the cost of a relational database based on SLA performance and capacity. That's sort of an interesting one to start at. And when I say serverless before, when people talk about serverless, the reason that's so damn attractive is because you can go and do things based on an event. You know, it could be a cron job. It could be something comes into a queue, into your queue, and every 15 minutes you pick it up, or it activates when I see a new object come into a storage account. That's why it's so attractive, because you pay for just that function running for whatever fraction of a second it's running. That's it. You only pay for when the events are happening, instead of versus taking it all the way up to a virtual machine where we're running.
Yeah, and maybe that's the disconnect.
Really, physical hardware.
Yeah. Maybe that's the disconnect, because I'm so stuck in the old way of doing things that, you know, I just have to get my head out of that and get it into kind of a new way of trying to architecture this stuff.
Yeah, but also don't forget too, don't feel bad, because I mean, the reality of anyone out there is, you know, 75% or more of what is going to be running still is going to be IaaS centric. And, you know, containers still are an IaaS centric concept. The way we manage them is not. So they're still going to be IaaS centric. And I think that's just reality. It's going to be hard to move some of these applications straight away today. Our goal, if we're looking at it as an operational model, is to first migrate. I'm not saying that just because it wants to make money. But, you know, migrate workloads in there. Because if you say, hey, I'm going to optimize before I migrate, we see how that always goes down. Hey, I'm going to migrate. I'm going to optimize my bare metal environment and then migrate it to a virtual. So not going to happen, guys. You need that impetus. But take it, you know, migrate things in, optimize. Let's not even talk about sort of modernizing, rewriting, or anything. Just optimize that environment. Start making it sort of, you know, as efficient as you can be. Set up schedules where you're scaling up and down and using the fact that you only pay for what you use, not what you buy up front, and do that. I mean, then modernize. I mean, start tying into your CI/CD pipeline. Use things like, you know, infra as code, and build that whole process in like that, which is awesome. And then sort of take that abstraction as far as you can. But it's going to take a long time, even just going from majority of workloads being IaaS today to, you know, if we ever get to everything being serverless, which I honestly still very much doubt. It's not something to ever feel ashamed about. It's just going to take a long time. I even had this conversation with a good friend of mine in Australia maybe 4 years ago, Rodney Hayward, Rodos, if you've seen him on the Twitters. Rodney's over at AWS, and we're chatting about this a long time back. And I was going, you know, it's going to be at least 5 years before people really start to shift away from infrastructure as a service. And part of the conversation was to go, that's a long time in IT. I think you're crazy. I think it's going to be that long. And I think I'm about a year away. So we'll see in 1 year, but I think it has kind of been accurate on us where, you know, we sort of look at it. It takes a long time for organizations to change. How many are still running mainframe? How many are using AS400? Go and talk to a large financial org.
Yeah.
And they'll be spending hundreds of millions of dollars in mainframe maintenance a year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, what could you do if you ran that on x86?
Well, Tony can talk about that, right?
Tony?
You caught me completely off guard.
You've still got mainframe stuff, right? Or AS400 or whatever?
Oh, yes, unfortunately.
How many AS400s do you have?
We just have one. But
that's not bad.
That's enough.
Last week you had 2,000.
Oh my goodness.
A lot of my customers are in the retail space, and man, I'll tell you what, AS400 and AIX is still so prevalent because it's one of those things that these stores have been running on these systems for years and years and years, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality is there.
Well, and the thing is, it's not like it's even going away anytime soon. We just bought a new unit in December of last year. And
you're actually refreshing that hardware.
Yeah. And we just went live in August. So, I mean, that sucker's going to be around for at least the next 10 years.
Oh, man.
My favorite thing about talking about that is all the cool little terms, like the ZAPs and the MIPS they talk about for performance measurements. I don't know what this is, but it sounds like a really cool video game.
Well, the other thing that's a severe pain in the butt about this situation is we just migrated over to a fat desktop client, which was horrible to install. Now we migrated over to something that uses Java. In 2018, we migrated to something that uses Java. And I've argued with the developers, and it's like, oh, well, it's totally different. It's a different platform. It works in a different way. And it's not your typical Java. And they would never do this HTML5 when I had suggested that. I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm not even going to get into that argument with you. I'm not going to go there. But yeah, everybody else is, dropping Java support left and right for browsers, and we migrated to a system that uses it. So that's pretty frustrating right there.
It's yeah, but I mean, I think that's technology in general. We kind of keep looking to the future, particularly people like ourselves, maybe in this call now or listening to the call. Wow, what next? This is cool. We can do all these things, and then there's some stuff which is so hard to move, and the appetite for risk is so low. It's going to take a long time. Yeah. And that could be a good segue to one of the points I know Brett was talking about initially about talking down the call, but some of the things we're even doing, you're seeing us doing it, and some application are doing it too, which is putting offerings into the cloud, which are, for want of a better word, almost they're pretty much bare metal, to address a lot of those workloads, which are hard to migrate because not everything is just going to migrate to a cloud environment with IaaS, microservices, or serverless. It's just not going to happen.
There's always replatforming that comes into play. Yeah.
So even for us right now, we have things like we just actually had our confident compute enclaves go live, where it's actually disconnected compute for data in a clear, so unencrypted data, which could be blockchain type data as an example, not Bitcoin mining. We have large instances with 40 terabytes of memory, which are bare metal. For in-memory databases, most prevalent we're seeing being SAP HANA. There is VMware on Azure happening right now as well. There is Cray supercomputers you can put in Azure. I'm speaking at NetApp Insight next week. We've had that one for almost a year now, by the way, the Cray on Azure. I'm speaking at NetApp Insight next week because we have Azure NetApp files where it is bare metal NetApp inside of an Azure data center, which you manage, get billed for everything out of the Azure portal.
Yeah, I was in Seattle 3 years ago for the first time, and I was walking around downtown one night, and I was walking by this random office building, and there's this big cement block sign that says Cray, and I'm like, oh, those guys, they're still around.
Yeah, they're interesting. They're an interesting company. I mean, people think about supercomputing, and they think about Cray quite a lot. They're not a huge percent of the market, but they have some of those massive workloads where people are running 100,000 plus compute cores in a single MPI-based job.
See, the kind of stuff that they're doing, are they doing massive literal scientific astronomical type calculations for universities and that kind of stuff? Is that where supercomputing comes into play?
For that traditional type of supercomputing, yes, to a degree, but you'll also find them in research, like energy research laboratories. I think some of the biggest ones in the United States are energy research.
Okay.
Weather bureaus. So it's more like NOAA or the Met.
Yeah.
Or, for me as an Australian, the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. They will do things like weather mapping, where you might go, hey, I can go and see a radar, and I can see down to we're going to get metrics, so be ready, 10-kilometer grid. Just I can see this little 10-kilometer grid.
This is America.
Awesome. Unless you listen to this podcast from any other country in the world.
Podcast. I know I have guys in India listening now.
Nice.
We like cricket too, as an Australian, by the way, but we're cheap. But you get people out there. You get weather agencies, for example, and they will look around. They will look, for example, at weather mapping into 500-meter grids. It's like it's like not even a block. It could be a city block or smaller, even down to, I think, 100-meter grids. And you're going, that's some pretty cool micro mapping they're doing. And every level of mapping they're doing is exponentially higher compute power.
Wow.
What Cray provides in this space, because let's be honest, it's Intel or AMD CPUs, it's memory, it's storage, it's GPU, it's the same stuff, but they have specialized interconnects and software. That's what they're providing for that traditional supercomputing. There's not many companies out there who need that level of scale. That said, I use internally the term big compute all the time. It's really just anything with a lot of compute resources, period. And that can be something which is loosely coupled workloads. We're seeing a lot of financial companies doing that for risk analysis. They'll go and analyze financial markets back, 50 years and predict their outlay, their risk, and what's going to happen next and where they invest. Computational fluid dynamics, where you're designing things like hull designs of a ship or the way a motor vehicle works. Or the most insane one I've seen is, how a chip is on a conveyor belt. So how fast can we run that conveyor belt so it won't fly off? How can we redesign the way?
Nice.
That's brilliant.
Because that equals money. It's sort of some amazing use case, and you take it down to where we're using it for AI-centric workloads, where the biggest ones I'm seeing, for example, are using GPUs to create digital worlds. You actually take in sensor data and you create a virtual world. It's actually like creating a video game. And you say, hey, I've trained a car. We've driven 100,000 hours on these cars. This is great. But to get it certified for level 3, you may need to go and do 100 million hours. So what happens is you create basically what's kind of a video game, change up scenarios in that, and train it using this digital twin for millions of hours of driving time, of virtual driving time. You can never actually do in the real world. And then, so it's like, running deep learning and machine learning jobs at just crazy scale too. Anyway, there's a lot of things there. It's very interesting.
So a little quick trivia fact, and Britton, I don't know if you even knew this. Cray is headquartered right here in Wisconsin, Chippewa Falls.
I heard something about that.
They are about 3 hours away from me, and probably you as well, over in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. So, yeah, and they've got a big office over in Minneapolis as well. Their original headquarters was out there.
No, they're not. They're based in Seattle, man.
Everybody's in Seattle.
No, seriously, they are. I'm sure. Wikipedia can't be wrong, and if it is wrong, I'm going to change it right now.
Where is Cray Computer located? Cray manufactures its products in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin.
Manufacturing is different than headquartering, though.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say HQ, did I?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, Seattle, Washington.
They have a presence here.
Well, no, they manufacture. I'm not surprised. I mean, a lot of Wisconsin needs what it can get, right? Yeah, I get it.
Well, we're talking about
wow.
I'm joking.
As a Texan, I appreciate that.
I haven't been to Wisconsin, but I did hang out with a guy from there last week. But
yeah, how was the pizza, by the way?
Some things are best left unspoken. It was exactly what I expected. Sorry, wow. You guys expected. It was pretty much a savory cheese pie tart, savory cheese tart, and I think it was in the same in any place. It was thick. The crust was not what I would assume to be a pizza crust. It's exactly what I expected.
That is, in essence, a Chicago-style pizza you were describing. Yes.
Yeah, if it was, I think using the term pizza, it's not all in bad, but using the term pizza is a misnomer. If they said savory cheese tart, you go, okay, this is quite a nice savory cheese tart.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned before, my dad's Italian. He came over from Australia when he was about 8, and we have these whole family things. We get very religious about pizza. It's like only Italian ingredients. If you look at pineapple, you're dead to me. Only Italian ingredients. It's got to be thin, no half and half. And then there's family rules as well.
Some of these quotes got to go in the podcast intro.
And there's also things here, there are internal family rules, pretty much. For example, like if you get and you go and get something like with chicken or whatever else, you eat it. You're not allowed the piece of our Diablo, which is basically a hot salami and chili pizza. Quite simple. They're very simple. They're not very big. Mm-hmm. And you have to eat. You have to eat that. You're not taking ours. You made the mistake. Deal with it.
Well, when Britton and I were over in Italy back in 2004 for the first time, we were kind of like a mini car tour and some other things that we did over there. And we got our first Italian pizza. We're like, what the heck is this? We had
it was amazing.
We had margarita, and it was just completely not what we were expecting as well, on the flip side of the coin that you're speaking about. But it was really good.
you'll get a 10-inch pizza, which you may be sharing with someone else over in over here, which is thick or whatever. I mean, hell, a Chicago pizza, you'd be sharing a 10-inch pizza with like 5 of your best friends. And well, actual Napoli style pizza, which is sort of the standard we talk about with like a margarita or something else, 10-inch pizza is just for you. It's no different to really having a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
See, now you're making me want to go to a Chicago style pizza place and order a, how are you referred to it as a cheese tart?
Savory cheese tart.
I think it's a good description.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to do that when I go there sometime. Just be like, yes, I'll have the savory cheese tart, please.
I'll look at you sideways.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I'm a heretic. I am a pineapple on pizza guy, and I'm not even sorry. It's delicious. I'm from Texas, so I know good barbecue pizza's just kind of,
So, Tim, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but it's on the internet, so it must be true. But Amazon is supposedly moving their HQ number 2 to Fort Worth.
I had not seen the news on that yet, but I knew that we were very, very, very close to the top of that list.
So, and a lot of people say it makes sense because Bezos has roots in Texas. So, your Fort Worth real estate prices might just be going up soon.
Buy now and sell your old home in a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
no joke.
Let's try to swing this back around here. Tim, do you have any other like cloud service, VMware integration questions you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we talked about this just a little bit before the recording started, and I wanted you to reiterate it again because it's a really great point for your services. Say my team uses Jenkins or we use Terraform or something like that. What is Azure's feeling on that?
That's great. Use whatever makes sense to you. We will offer things first party, but we really don't mind. First and foremost, we're a platform company. So what you actually mentioned, I think before the call started, was using Azure DevOps, which I'll go on the record saying I personally hate the fact that we've named a product after the technology. It's like, come on, guys. So when I say, hey, we can do DevOps in the cloud, you mean Azure DevOps or actually DevOps thing? Just personal thing. Until like 4 weeks ago, that was Visual Studio Team Services. So you were talking about using that to tie in with Kubernetes in Azure. Pros, cons, whatever way you want to look at it, Azure CI/CD via pipeline. So support only for AKS or writing things within a VM, not running a third-party service and using the APIs. If it doesn't support it, don't use it. Go and use Jenkins. Go and use Git CLI. We don't really mind. We'll support them all. We have a huge thing with open source, and we've had to work harder than anyone else out there for open source. I mean, if you look back historically at some of the things our leadership have said, they have not been very friendly in that sense. Over to now, where we have, and I pretty much pretty damn happy to say it, like more support for open source products than any other cloud provider out there. We actually work harder with the people who will write products around open source technologies to build these directly into Azure and give that kind of great experience. GitHub acquisition, even prior to that being acquired, we are keeping that separate in terms of management too. But we were the number one contributor on open source projects on GitHub. And then just last week, I think it was, we have 60,000 patents at Microsoft which relate to open source projects. Some of these, like we were actually getting revenues of things like every Android device that went out. We made more money than Google, I heard anecdotally. Don't hold me to that true legal. If you're listening, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I heard anecdotally, we make more money there due to the patents we own. We actually made available all 60,000 of the patents last week, I think it was, or the week before.
I saw that story.
The invention network. It's like, that's the final thing. We've pretty much gone, any of these patents which we've made, we've done R&D into, and you want to run your project around them, it's open to you if you're in this network. You can go use it. You can do it. You don't have to pay us money for it.
Yeah, that's huge.
Because, all the things about going, hey, we're working with all these companies like Terraform or Red Hat or SUSE or whatever to products which will work well with Azure and integrate in tightly and be a good partnership is one thing, and claiming to be a big open source contributor is another thing. But then saying, hey, all this stuff we can monetize, we're just saying, just use it. I think that's pretty cool in terms of putting our money where our mouth is.
I think so. That is a very bold statement to make.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And even I don't know if you notice things like this, for example, you talked about Java. There's been like quite a few concerns about Java support going forward because of some other companies who may own the rights to it for ongoing SDK support. We've actually even gone and done things like any project running in Azure using Java, we're providing access to the Zulu SDK and support.
Awesome.
So we're doing a heck of a lot. It's pretty cool, but taking it all the way back to what your message was is use whatever works for you. If it makes sense, keep using it. If we don't support it as well as you want today and you're using it, let us know. We will go and build support in for it. Obviously, it's going to be based on the more customers using it, the quicker we'll integrate things in. Be triaged that way, but we will build it in. We have MySQL, Cassandra, Mongo as first-party services within Azure. You can go and build up a database as a service. It doesn't have to be SQL, SQL, whatever you want to call it. I saw all the tweets about that Jack Ryan thing. You don't have to use it. You can go and run VMs. We are now at the stage where there are more Linux VMs inside of Azure than Windows VMs.
Wow.
I think
cool.
there's been a very commendable push inside of Microsoft that we've noticed with, I think, the CEO change, that you guys are going more open source. You're helping a lot out in the community, a lot more than, well, not necessarily than you used to, but just, that extended push out and helping the community more and going more open source, I think has really been noticed and appreciated in the community. So.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, I think I love it. I mean, it's great. If you went and looked even at the Azure Docs page I just showed you, everything there, and this is before we acquired GitHub, that's all open source. Our documents page are open source now. You can go in and raise bug requests, and our docs are all in Markdown. So if you don't like something, it's wrong. Tell us it's wrong. Wow. We do that with a whole lot of the work now. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty cool.
So, Ben, you were at, I'm assuming, Ignite, was it 2 weeks ago?
I didn't have to go, so I actually chose not to because I've been on the road 3 weeks before that. I let other people go, but I can answer any question about what happened.
So I'm curious. Like I've been so in VMworld and coming out of that that I didn't pay much attention to Ignite. So coming out of Ignite, what were some of the headline points of interest that you think people might have missed, or something that you were excited about that was announced?
Gosh, it's so much. I've got it done there, actually. I do an update deck occasionally, and it's every time we have something like this happens, like, okay, I guess I've got to go and build this all over again. But so let's see. Let's go sort of to the app dev space. There was quite a lot we did around obviously the DevOps work. I mentioned the Zulu SDK. Azure DevOps was launched the week before. And there were things like Service Fabric, which is our own internal sort of application for building microservices, including support for Java, which is pretty good as well. So, extending out beyond .NET, Windows.
So Java's not totally dead
yet. Not totally, but it's really just going to people use it and use it. Look, there are some advantages if you're running a Java app. I mean, it's portable. You can run it into, if you've got it running on an old Windows machine or something, you can run it in a container pretty easily, that's a cool thing. That's one benefit. There was things around that. There was a lot around storage. We announced our Ultra SSD. So let's take this to the IO stage. Ultra performance SSD, where a single disk, sorry, it shouldn't be SSD, it should just be disk. A single virtual disk on a machine will go up to 140,000 IOPS. Wow. And then you can, of course, take those, and I mean, all these disks are redundant already. You don't need to use RAID as a thing to make them redundant. But you can go and then sort of stripe across those disks in Linux or Windows. So you go across 10 of them, and suddenly you've got 1.5 million IOPS.
That's crazy.
VM, which is pretty cool. We had announcements around, we did our new H series. We talked about high performance compute. These are ones which are focusing on that workload. So we have what we call H already. And these are running Haswell CPUs and have InfiniBand and RDMA. Cool. The new ones are running Skylake, and there is an option for AMD EPYC. EPYC's really sort of got AMD back in a big way, where the memory CPU bandwidth has really gone way up. They've sort of pipped Intel there, even though the CPU per CPU performance is at the same level. And it's kind of interesting that memory bandwidth is sort of what raises. It's a tide that raises all boats. We brought that out, and of course have InfiniBand and RDMA access. That's allowing people to run up to, I think, 60 cores on a single machine, which is dedicated to them with AMD EPYC. And that means in a single InfiniBand job, MPI job can run up to 12,500 cores without any special configuration work we have to do for you. That was a really cool announcement. Wow. A whole lot about our data box line, which just, if you want, we can just say, hey, let's just call it, let's just say it's a bit like Snowball. We already had this out there and announced, and we did like a data box, which is about, I think, 80 terabytes. We did a data box heavy, which is approaching the petabyte range. But we also launched our DataBox Edge appliance, and this DataBox Edge appliance is doing all kinds of cool stuff out there. It's running the Moby, so you can run your Docker containers out there and build the microservices on the edge. And we can have it build up with FPGA or GPU, so you can do things like inferencing on the edge as well. Really, some pretty cool stuff. Ultra SSD, sort of the Ultra SSD as well, Ultra performance disk we brought out as well, also provides support for up to 64 terabytes to a single virtual disk, which is, again, something which was sorely missing out there. I mean, things we've been used to in the VMware world for many years weren't available in the cloud world for that much. I mean, initially Amazon and ourselves had a 1 terabyte disk limitation, which we've had it 4 terabytes prior to this. I think Amazon managed to get some high performance disk up to 16, and now we've got up to 64. So that's really, really cool. Another one of the favorite things I actually saw come out was what we did with our Azure Container Registry. So we made changes around this to allow it to the customers to actually to use this container registry and validate containers before they're deployed. So you can actually set up trust in your container registry running on Azure as a service, and make sure that the integrity and the publisher of all the data that goes in the container image is legitimate. So only authorized users or services can push images up there and validate this point of deployment. We also extend this out away from just the container images out to Helm charts as well. So you can run and validate and make sure you have a single source of truth for your Helm charts in your container images inside of Azure. That was a really cool thing.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Go to Tim. That's
yeah, let's try to go through a few things. Actually, I am pulling up a slide on the side screen here because it's just so gosh damn many things here. The Azure DevOps product, which we did announce, formerly VSTS. Formerly VSTS. I'm just going to make sure I minimize my little notes section so I don't abuse it too much. Okay, one sec. Where are we? Here we go. Share screen. It's too many options. Here it is. Sorry, I get used to the tools we use the most, which is, of course, Skype. But the Azure pipelines with GitHub CI integration, we've made this free for up to 10 open source projects.
That's awesome.
So if you're using any open source projects, unlimited minutes and users and 10 free parallel pipelines to go with basically anything you want to use, and that's really, really cool. I mentioned Java and Azure before in the SDK. The Azure Zulu SDK free updates and support is a big deal in case you are using Java and you're worried about what may be happening in the future around Java support and maintenance. Infrastructure, DataBox Edge, Ultra SSDs I did mention. HV2 I mentioned.
Physical boxes.
DataBox Edge. DataBox is a physical box, yeah.
Okay. And the Edge is that specific for like people wanting to onboard stuff into Azure, or is it?
No. So the data box I mentioned prior, that is more like your classic snowball approach where you click a thing online, FedEx sends out a box, and and it comes in, arrives, it's ruggedized, encrypted, whatever else, and you copy your data in, get it picked up, copy it into Azure storage, done. And in fact, we have that working as well. When we have the Azure NetApp file service go general availability, it will work with that too. The Databox Edge, it's seeding in the cloud. Databox Edge, on the other hand, is something totally different. It's basically permanently left there. It can do things like obviously optimize traffic and throughput, but it can work on the edge as well. So you can run some microservices. You could do some stream analytics. And I mentioned inferencing, which really when people say AI, I keep shuddering so often nowadays because it's become a marketing term.
Right.
Really AI is for me a combination of a few things, which is, sensor data, pulling data from different sources and multiple sources. It's then storing that data and building training a model based on that. So using things like deep learning, you can build frameworks with TensorFlow, Chain, PyTorch, whatever else. And you're training a model based on that data set and using that to create digital twins and stuff like that. And then also, you're then taking that data and analyzing that data through machine learning models to better analyze where you need to retrain and doing the work with the model. Once that model's trained, you can take it. And by the way, the better algorithm versus a worse algorithm, whichever one has data to be trained on is going to be the better model. It's kind of an interesting thing. You can then run that model on the edge, and something like Databox Edge, using GPUs or an FPGA, can go and do inference, for example, on the edge, do image recognition, voice recognition, anything else. You can actually go out and run that on the edge. It's pretty cool stuff to do. I was on a panel in New York about a month ago, and I was one of the people on the panel was one of the founders of Pure Storage. His name John, and he was talking about cloud being really just for burst workloads. By the way, bursting is terrible. Don't do it for bursting. Just to be clear, because data's hard to move.
Right.
It's data gravity, guys. I mean, money can buy you bandwidth, but latency is forever. So
that's awesome.
And like he was talking about, for cloud, for example, if you're running, 2,000 cameras in an airport, you wouldn't want to copy that data to the cloud to inference the data, look for images, match patterns, etc. And they're going, no, you wouldn't. But you also wouldn't want to move it to a data center. Really, you want to do as much processing as you can on the edge. I mean, imagine a scenario where every camera has an FPGA, or maybe every pod of 20 cameras goes into a single appliance where you've got an FPGA which is doing inferencing. It's taking a model and going, hey, is that this person? Is there any of these list of suspects? Or B, is it something we're not sure about? Okay, we're only going to keep the things which are suspects, maybe suspect people or actions, or things we're uncertain about, because the things we're uncertain about, we'll retrain the model on and we'll get human review on. And the things we know about, we're going to raise a flag about. The rest of the data, we don't need to keep all that data beyond maybe the life of the device's storage. That to me is where we're sort of going. You talk about intelligent edge. That's really what the intelligent edge is. I mean, I had someone say a few weeks ago, it's like, intelligent edge is in the cloud. It kind of is, because you don't want to keep every little damn thing. You just want to keep the things which are relevant and be able to do that work immediately. So yeah, that's interesting. To me, it's a cool thing. It ties in with the whole AI vision and model. Going through here, sorry?
As a hardware model at the edge, I find it interesting. I mean, it's almost like, I'm almost curious if they're going to start doing some like VMware Cloud and AWS type stuff, but in Azure, where you can kind of buy or rent a physical box that is hosted inside an Azure data center. Because right now, all this stuff is kind of shared out, right?
We actually are running this in private preview right now on the East Coast. So that's something which you'll definitely see coming out more.
Okay.
And more announcements around the future. Definitely. And I mentioned before around bare metal, not the cloud isn't going to be for every piece of thing. That edge appliance is going to run on the edge. Mm-hmm. It's going to run in a site and they go and will read whatever else.
Yeah.
While the the other offerings you're talking about, they're still going to run inside of an Azure data center.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting. You can see, you guys can see the shit screen I'm sharing. There's a lot. Just some of the key things to touch on, which are really interesting. The global reach. We are actually, you can connect express route circuits if you want AWS terms, same as Direct Connect. So you go to Equinix and you have a 10 gig circuit directly into Azure. And then you have it from New York and you have one out of Milwaukee. I'm assuming Milwaukee's a place. Hey, I know Middle America. I got Wisconsin, man. Come on. But say you have one out of there. You can connect out. You have this 10, 15 sites connected this way into Azure. But then what you can do within Azure is actually mesh your internal virtual networks and use instead of your own BGP routing and set up the equivalent of your own MPLS.
That's cool.
That's really interesting. I don't know if you know the sort of things about when you talk about fiber around the world and the amount of networking that companies own. Microsoft is the second largest owner of networking infrastructure and bandwidth around the world out there.
What was that new pipe you guys put in that was shared with Facebook? There was some ridiculous amount of bandwidth.
I can't remember, to be honest. Too many things that happen. You can search it up. Number one, by the way, is Google behind us. But we actually use our traffic not for internal processes. It's actually all for customer traffic. So you get full access to use that network, which is pretty cool. The hybrid side of things, we brought out Azure. I haven't got on screen here, but we have Service Fabric, which I mentioned briefly before. This is supported to run on Windows Server on premises, or if you're on Windows Server on another cloud, you can run it there. So you go, hey, I'm using microservices with Service Fabric instead of Kubernetes. Fine, you may have a reason. You don't have to run it only on Azure. You have the ability to run it on premises or in multi-cloud as well by using Windows Server. We've improved. We have whole things around modern security, Azure Security Center. We've done some more updates around IaaS, PaaS services, everything being in there and included, and also advanced threat protection. Going through a few things there. There's going to be marketing stuff you see on the screen as well. So this is what I mentioned prior as well around open source DBs, MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB, running as a service inside of Azure.
Interesting.
Don't use SQL. You can go and run whatever you want. Skipping AI. We have a service called Cognitive Services where we actually target it at really developer-centric people. You can do things like speech text, text-to-speech, speech translation without being a data scientist. We have a model. We have trained that model. You just have to use the APIs to write into that. You can start doing all of these things in a single, say, bot framework or job to do things like speech recognition, translation, inferencing, sentiment analysis, and even go and build these into a bot out of Python.
So is that strictly for like a web app, or could you type Cortana on a Windows PC into that kind of speech recognition stuff?
Let me see if I can share my whole screen. Give me 1 sec here. I'm going to change a little bit. Change screens. Yeah, you can do it pretty much to anything you want. It's just an API set, so it could be a bot. And I don't know if you can see what browser I'm using. Anyway,
at least you're not installing it in the middle of a presentation like the one guy at Microsoft.
Michael Leeworthy, another Australian, very, very proud moment for me. So he did that. I think was it at Ignite last year? I believe.
I think it was a year or two ago.
So this is a really cool thing. So what I've got up now is ailab.microsoft.com. This is some examples we've got up there of how you can use Azure Cognitive Services to do different things. So again, you don't have to be a data scientist. You just have to use these APIs. There's a cricket example for any of your Indian listeners up here too. It's a Spectacom one. Really, really cool one. As an example here, you can actually sketch up things on a whiteboard or a piece of paper.
No way.
That's cool.
Yeah. And, it'll do the inferencing of what you've written. And this can be like images and all kinds of stuff as well. So you could, let me dive into that quickly. You can go in here and put like image boxes, all kinds of crap in there. And it'll build it up as an HTML page for you.
Wow.
So you say, I'm not actually a developer. I'm just going to try and find the thing on this. Yeah, but you can go in and it'll do that work for you and build it up. And we've got it here. You can go in and go, well, here's a GitHub repo to go and actually do this myself.
That's so cool.
Which is pretty awesome. I'm trying to get back to my screen. Turn the sound off over here. So yeah, you've got the GitHub repo there. That's pretty awesome, right? So you talk about a small business going, hey, I want to do a web page. It's like, hey, just draw it out on a piece of paper and we'll build the form for you.
That's incredible.
We just provide ability. This is a bot framework, which is kind of an interesting one here. Speech capture, synthesis of speech, not just actually translating it into text and doing things. It's actually doing the and analyzing the sentiment as well. So not just what you say, but how you feel about what you say. Huh. Yeah. So, if you say to your wife, hey, I'm just going to go out to the pub. I'll see you in 6 hours. She could say that's fine. Depending on how you want to inflect on that, it will mean different things. But this is one here where it's using conversational AI and talking about, speech capture, bot logic, synthesis, sentiment analysis, and speech to text and translation. And again, the whole project sits here in GitHub. We can go to the repo and see the whole way to go and build this in, from signing into an account to where the templates are, the lab materials, and doing the basic build out. I can do it, so it must be pretty easy. And then just for the conspiracy theorists out there as well.
Nice.
I was actually just looking at that one. I was like, what?
Down the street from you, isn't it, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty close.
There was like 34,000 pages released last year by the US government about the assassination of JFK. So they were digitally released. They were scanned to PDF files and evidence photos and all this kind of stuff. So we actually used AI to run some machine learning using Azure Search and cognitive search against a whole lot of this data to go and build out a cognitive search understanding and start building mapping in between this.
Wow.
So you can go and view, we've got like images here where you can see the different baselines, things like acts of Congress, how it relates to Cuba, and tie that in together. And again, the whole thing, you can go and launch it and view it, and really sort of, get your nerd on around that. There's also going to be one on UFOs next. Or you can go and look at how we built it and say, well, how would I build this? Talk about a real world application. How could I build this around something like legal discovery in a case?
Yeah.
I get like 20 terabytes of case files in digital format. And we all see in the movies how you swap people with files. And that is a tactic that happens. And you can suddenly go, well, let's start doing smart search across the whole thing. We just dump it in, and we start building up. We've got the whole thing in there. So really cool thing to go look at, ailab.microsoft.com.
Very cool.
Pretty awesome.
Switching back quickly. Where were we here? Switching back to the PowerPoint side of things, just because it's my notes for the details we look at here.
If you want to pick like two more, then we can wrap up.
Look, I think the only other thing I'd probably want to talk about here, which is sort of interesting because we talked about the edge, was Azure Sphere, which we actually went GA with. So Azure Sphere is basically an end-to-end security solution. So we have a lot of background in security. We're like the most, so what's the word for it? It's not, attacked, I think, organization in the world, not penetrated, but attacked after the US government looking for those JFK files.
Right.
We have a big experience with this, and also Xbox. Does anyone have an Xbox or used an Xbox?
Yeah.
Yep.
We have a bounty out, and we have since we actually brought it out on Xbox, because we have a combination of in silicon and software-based security in these we're very, very confident about. And we have a bounty of anyone who can actually penetrate the Xbox. which we have not paid yet.
Nice.
User's life. What we've done actually is take the technology we used in building that and make it available to customers to go and build IoT devices on. Because security, when we talk about security, I mean, if you're a VMware and data center, whatever guy, we think about perimeter, and then maybe a little bit of in-depth around sort of, how do we secure within the applications? How do we secure at the edge? All this kind of stuff. But for me, a lot of it was really securing my networks. But then you've got these devices which are connected to the internet everywhere. We're gathering sensor data, we're pulling in new data all the time. And we've actually made these available. We've done like seed kits as well, so you can start getting seed silicon and start testing and developing on Azure Sphere and test it and see how it works. And we've also made it so companies can go and build their IoT devices on the technology we've come up with here in the silicon software side of things, and have that security guarantee, which I think we're talking about being flipping back up at 10 years. Yeah, 10-year lifetime for the device they build as a trustworthy platform. Wow. 10 years is in terms of security, that's forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that to me, that's one of the other cool things we look at. It's like cloud's great, but the edge is so important. The intelligent edge is so important. We have to always make sure we count that as well.
Very cool.
By the way, I did find some of the stats on that undersea cable. It's 160 terabits of data per second. Yeah, it's enough. It's enough to stream 71 million high definition videos simultaneously.
That's not a lot at all.
A couple of Americans' Netflix accounts will.
I was going to say that's going to be all used up with Netflix anyway.
Well, but that's how Netflix gets around that stuff, though, is they have physical boxes all over the country that have one of the most popular stuff in the local area for you, so you don't have to go so far to get it.
Content delivery networks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, this has been really cool. I think I've seen kind of that sketch to code thing in sci-fi somewhere before. But to see that it's actually happening is really, really cool. And I know plenty of people who just do nothing but whiteboard and draw things out. And if you can start to get to a point where you can reliably do this, to move stuff from the physical space like that into the digital world, that's incredible stuff. So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right.
Yeah, no.
Tony, Tim, do you guys have any
when you go and look at
thoughts?
Nope, I'm good. It's been very interesting.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
Ben, thanks for joining us. I feel like I'm always at a loss when I talk to people who are really smart in these areas, and you have shown me again that I need to learn more.
No, don't worry. I think every one of us in technology who is doing our jobs is constantly racked with fear and guilt. We don't know enough, because I am. Because so much going on. We can't keep up. I think we just have to talk to people, get a good understanding of what's happening around us, and where we can look. And then when the actual project comes up, when the thing comes up, we know how to dive in and start finding those details. The trick is not knowing everything. It's having an idea and a network and can help you find where to look. Once you know where to look, ish.
Yeah, you've dropped some good links. I've taken note of 4 of them. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll play this out and wrap it up, and we'll go from there. Thanks a lot, Ben. If you need to drop, you can. we can say talk to you later.
Cool.
They're assembling outside
They're
the
at
door.
the door.
It's a big day.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ben.
Thank you.
This is Gigacast episode 22 for October 14th, 2018. Thanks again to Ben DeQual. He is at Ben Dick on Twitter. I am at VCIXNV. Tim is at VTimD. He's no longer at ALT, whatever his old Twitter handle was. Tony's at Import Car Guy. Blessings to Tony and his family as they're about to expand. And we will catch you all later with our next episode in November with none other than Mr. Cody D. Arkland. Talk to you later.